Today we're taking a look at how you can grab a financial model in Excel and reverse engineer it all the way down to journal entries. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So this video is a bit different than what I actually do, and what I want to talk about is how years of practice with a specific tool, in this case Excel, allowed me to grab a financial model, reverse engineer it all the way down to a trial balance and to journal entries, and be able to import that in a QuickBooks sandbox company that we can use for development of our software that integrates with QuickBooks. There were some really tricky parts along the way, so I'm pretty sure this video is going to be really helpful even if you don't have this problem, and obviously probably nobody else does, but I want to share the way I approached the problem, how I broke it down into tasks, and how I tried to figure out different ways to circumvent limitations that Excel and QuickBooks impose on this specific workflow that I had to deal with. So let's go ahead and take a look. By the way, if you're enjoying the content, I recently started a free weekly newsletter where I talk about business, startups, automations, Excel, productivity, things like that. First link in the description below, and you can always unsubscribe if you don't find it interesting. And if you want to download the entire working file that we look through this video, you can go to the Minty Analyst Gumroad store, the link in the description below, and don't worry, everything there is free. They're like Excel templates, ebooks, so you can grab whatever you find interesting. So before I get started, I want to show you my plan, and you see it. Before I even started thinking about how to reverse engineer a three-statement model all the way back to QuickBooks data, I sat down and wrote down this plan. So first, I'm going to create a reconciling three-statement model in Excel. Then I'm going to reverse map the subtypes and accounts. So what I'm doing is going from a three-statement model back to accounts in QuickBooks. Then I need to calculate turnovers per account, debit plus credit. Use that to update the chart of accounts and prepare a CSV for a summary. Here I had a question, do I need to reverse create TBs or can I skip? And it turned out I needed to do that. But it was actually easier than I expected. Then generate journal entries and figure out if I need to import clients and vendors and invoices separately and only import journal entries for the other accounts, or if I can just import journal entries. And that's how it happened. I didn't need to go this route and separate this. So yeah, I have some constraints here written out, but this is how I approach complex problems, especially in Excel, when I need to get from point A to a point B, and I know that there are like 15 steps in between, and it's not like immediately obvious. I always try to sit down and pretty much flowchart the process so I can have a guiding light. And this actually helped me a lot. I'm gonna run through what I did in Excel, and you see that some steps deviate from this because you do one thing and then you start the next one and figure out there's an issue and you have to do something slightly different. But having this plan and having a clear structure to my process really helped me a lot. Okay, let's go ahead and see what I did in Excel, because I'm really excited to share how I approached this problem. So we need a test company in QuickBooks Online in order to develop our product. But the problem is that anytime you create a developer sandbox company, you don't get any data in it. So you just get over the last few months, some dummy data, and it's not really usable if you want to be doing more advanced analytics and things like that. And that's our product, is QuickBooks Analytics. So let's take a look at how we can go from this to this, having detailed reports in QuickBooks spanning over a few years. So the way I was thinking about it initially was, okay, I can go in and just play an accountant and just do all those numbers in here. But the thing is that there are relationships between different accounts. The other thing is that even if you go through the income statement and the balance sheet, it's much harder to just figure out. So I took a a financial statement that's like an income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement, which is a 3-statement model from my course on financial modeling on Udemy. I was thinking, okay, let's figure out how to get from this to QuickBooks, to do it backwards. So I have my API reference here, which is pretty much every account type and account subtype that we have in QuickBooks. And I've mapped it to my own structure of a balance sheet and income statement. And then I started playing here. Kind of hard to read, but the idea here is that I have this as my model, and I'm looking at where would each of those go. And the idea was to transform that to this. So I would have the income statement that I want to get to, one of the subtypes that would go into payroll, for example, payroll expenses, and then just one QuickBooks account. And I would try to figure out how to get all this data into this single account. So I did that for the income statement, for the balance sheet. And the problem was that this is annual. I want to have monthly data. So right from the start, I was like, okay, even if this works, I'll still have to break down those like 8 years into multiple months. And even if I go from 2020 to 2023, this is like 48 months. So I need an income statement and a balance sheet for those 48 months. So I took the first year here, 2016, and turned that into my December 2019, because I wanted to have opening balances for my first period, January 2020. And what I did here is I pretty much went in and built a 48-month financial model. So I have the 3 statements up here, then I have all the various assumptions. And if you're more interested into this, you'll be able to download this file and see how I built up the 3 statements going forward. This is a pretty simple model in terms of financial modeling, but it was enough for our purposes because we're not looking at transactional data, at journal entries. What we need is the income statement, balance sheet over for each month over a longer period, so we can test the functionality of our product. So I went ahead and built that, and I was like, okay, now I have income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. And the cash flow statement, I'm not importing it, it's auto-generated. Just doing it here to make sure that everything matches when I'm building the 2 other statements. Now, what I needed to do is to get from the income statement and balance sheet to a trial balance. So I took all those accounts that I'll be using and I started building this monstrosity here. So I have all those accounts in the opening balance, debit turnover, credit turnover, and closing balance. And I pretty much started figuring out what the numbers would be for the debits and credits for each account in order to get to this 3-statement monthly model. You only have to figure it out for 1 month, and then everything else just tracks and just works. And that's how I got a 48-month trial balance. The next thing was I wanted to go from trial balance to journal entry. So I built this journal entry exporter that just makes 1 entry per month. So you pick the month here and it just makes 1 journal, the journal date, and all the accounts with their debit turnovers, all the accounts with their credit turnovers. And for the accounts that have a customer or a supplier, I just created 2 basic, like a customer named customer and a supplier named supplier GA. The next problem I faced is that QuickBooks in the US does not allow you to import journal entries. So if you take a look at this here, if I go to like accountant settings, you'll see that I actually generated a Canadian company. So I used QuickBooks Canada because it allows you to import journal entries. I have no idea why that is, but it turns out that QuickBooks in the US allows you to import just a few things. So if you're looking at a US company and QuickBooks, you only get these types of things that you can import. So as you can see, there are no journal entries here. But if I switch to a Canadian company in the sandbox, you see that I have journal entries here. So I can import journal entries. So that was a small win. But then I started importing. I imported a test journal and it didn't work. I went through QuickBooks and realized that because I'm closing my accounts, so I'm recognizing revenue on the credit side of services, but then I'm closing it against profit, against retained earnings and the debits. So apparently that's not how QuickBooks works. And I had to leave all the journal entries open. So I generated this version, which just doesn't close the expense and the revenue accounts against retained earnings. And then I built this macro that allows me to grab this section here and just export it as a CSV. Here on the side, I have a tracking of what I've imported. And the idea is that you would select a month here. So let's say October, hit export CSV, and it would create a journal with those journal entries in the form of CSV that can be uploaded to QuickBooks. So if I take a look at our report here, income statement, the profit and loss report in QuickBooks, you see that we have a total income of 33.3 million. And if I go to import data, journal entries, and just pick the CSV file that I just exported, then hit next. The only thing I need to do is figure out the date format, next, start import, and that's pretty much it. So now if I go to reports and look at the profit and loss, you see that we're now at 38.2 because I added an additional month for this year. And the best part is that that way in like minutes, I was able to import all this data going backwards from 2020, which allows us to really test the functionality of the product that we're building. But yeah, I was so proud with this achievement. So starting with a simple 3-statement model, figuring out how to like quickly build it into a 48-month model, then figuring out how to back into the trial balance. You see here I did some reconciliations and everything to make sure that my debit and credit turnovers make sense. And then building my journal entry exporter and my journal entry exporter for open books, and having this macro generate the CSV files for me. And if I wanted, I could have had like a macro run through those and generate like one single CSV file. But I wanted to like keep it a bit more granular so I could easily like delete specific journals. So let's say we want to look at our product, we want to look at what would happen if you only have 2 years. Then I just need to go in and just delete the first 12 journals and it would work. For the chart of accounts, which I have here, obviously I wanted to have this in the same format that I can import it if I create a new sandbox company with the opening balances here, but there was no need for a macro because this is pretty much a one-time exercise where I just need this sheet and just import it once. So yeah, that was it. I really wanted to share this experience because it was quite the adventure. It, by the way, it took me less than 2 days to do this whole thing with the importing and everything. And this is pretty cool because I was kind of worried that I would have to go in and do all those entries manually, which would have been quite, I don't know, it's like 27 accounts. Let's say I have like 40 lines here because some of them are 0. And doing this 48 times, copy pasting the 40 rows in each journal, I would have definitely made a lot of mistakes. So that was a nice way to solve it. And I'm really happy when I face challenges like this because this is something that I definitely said, no, it's impossible in the beginning. I actually spent 2 weeks, not the entire time, but for 2 weeks I was researching and looking for a ready-made like import that I can like have a huge, like a dump file almost like, and just import that once. Or I even contacted QuickBooks support asking if they can like help me generate a larger data set. but yeah, they totally didn't get my question, replied something completely else. But yeah, I sat down and just figured out how to do it. Okay guys, that's all I had for today. I just really wanted to share the process that I went through to achieve this task of pretty much building up entire accounting for a company in QuickBooks that we could then use to develop our product. So thank you for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, and maybe even punch the bell icon to receive notifications every time I upload a new video. Till then, thanks for watching. Oh yeah, and check this video out.